So I would like to call to order the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District meeting of the Board of Directors this Thursday, July 8th. And thank you everyone for attending. We'll begin with a roll call. And this is a now very formal part of our agenda. Mr. McGlasson?
Munson?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Githens?
Here.
Hamilton? Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Jones? You're muted, Ms. Jones.
We see her.
We see her, but she is still muted.
She keeps shaking her head, but I don't know what that means.
Say it means she's there.
There we go.
I'm not really here. I'm trying to be here.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Swafford,
For some reason my computer wouldn't work.
you have a quorum.
Thank you. So before we begin, we have a bit of housekeeping. We need to have a brief discussion before the minutes about our meeting arrangements for the future. And also, I would like to propose that we move the discussion of our proposed budget until after the department reports. So that's item 6 on the agenda. Moves after item 8, unless there are objections. I ask unanimous consent to amend the agenda. Are there any objections? Thank you. We'll just move right into housekeeping then. And Mr. McGlasson, will you begin this? And this also allows Mr. Baker, our legal guidance, to not have to stay for the whole meeting and just address what we need to do at the beginning. So please.
Yeah, I can start. And I apologize, for the confusion on how this meeting was going to be held, but in the time of setting up the packet and the fair and the 4th of July, the governor issued an executive order that extended parts of the emergency declaration and rescinded other sections of it, from my understanding. And there was some confusion about what that meant with regard to public meetings being held. But at any rate, with the initial thought to have this as a hybrid meeting, that initiated some discussion between myself and Mr. Baker regarding noticing meetings and what our requirements were with regard to making a determination of whether a meeting would be hybrid or virtual, and our requirements to notice that. So I guess I would ask Mr. Baker to relay to the board some of the thoughts and information that he relayed to me about that, so the board can think about how we want to do this moving forward.
Well, hello, good afternoon. I'll share my thoughts, and if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them as best I can. Actually, the extension of the governor's executive order through July gives us somewhat of a reprieve, if you will. I think we were all looking forward to the expiration of the executive order at the end of June, and as it approached the end of June, some of us became a little stressed by all of that, and I think maybe I was fit into that category, and this was one of the things. The procedure for the hybrid meetings was one of the things that caused me some apprehension about the expiration of the executive order. So now I have another month to to make sure that I have it all figured out. The most complicated part of the procedure is really, and I've come to this conclusion with my conversations with Tom, because he asks me good questions and challenging questions that I don't always have a real good answer for. And just when I think I've got a good answer, I've muddied the water a bit. Tom would probably agree with that. But here's my thinking today anyway, and I don't think it'll change much. The notice requirements being the most complicated part. Anyway, I think so my thought about this particular body is weighed against what I think your plan is for the future, which is to hold your meetings at the Nat U Hill courtroom. And it's against that I form my thoughts about all of that. We benefit from holding proceedings in the Nat U Hill courtroom by the fact that the public has for some time been able to view those meetings remotely. I'm not familiar with the extent that the public could participate in the meeting short of viewing, but I'll learn that shortly. But I do think that there is a benefit from holding meetings in that particular venue. So now that you have adopted a resolution to conduct hybrid meetings, you can do so when you wish. 1 month, you may wish to conduct your meeting under the old procedure being the one that we followed before the public health emergency declaration, where all members are present and can conduct business, at least to the extent that you have a quorum. The public would be physically present, or view the proceeding remotely. Or in another month, you might decide that you want to conduct your meeting under the hybrid procedure. Perfectly fine to do that, given that you've adopted a resolution that permits you to do so. Here's the kick. And Tom and I discussed this the other day. We've decided here at the legal department that for the governing bodies that have this option, they will need to make a decision between their meetings about how they're going to conduct their next meeting. Giving themselves enough time for a notice to be properly and timely posted. We have to post our notices, as you all probably know, not less than 48 hours before the public meeting. So you would want to give yourselves enough time to get that notice timely posted, because the notice for a hybrid meeting is going to be different than the notice that we post for a traditional public meeting. So that is a bit going to be a little tricky. I think maybe we'll get better at it as we go, or maybe my unfounded. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought someone had a question. I'll be reviewing the notices that Tom has prepared over the next week to tweak the language a little bit and to give all of us some comfort that we're posting proper notice. We'll get that lined out. The thing that concerns me a little bit, and then I won't go on much longer, is when you decide that you're going to conduct a hybrid meeting, it's critical that you have at least 50% of your members present for the meeting. If we, during a hybrid meeting, a meeting that we've noticed as being conducted under the hybrid procedure, if we fall short of our 50% present for that meeting, we cannot conduct public business and reach any final action on a matter during that meeting. So it's critical that we have at a minimum, 50% of our people present. So when you're deciding whether to conduct a hybrid meeting, of course, you're probably going to take a roll call. Who's going to be present? It's very important for those who pledge to be present to do their very best to follow through, because you know, let's just use this evening for an example. If we were going to conduct this hybridly, in a hybrid manner, if we thought we had a 50% guarantee of presence and someone just failed to show up, the meeting is, for all intents and purposes, over for public business. So that will be a little tricky. I think that, and then there's some administrative things that we have to follow. Our minutes will have to show various things. We'll have to identify who is present physically, who is participating electronically, who was absent, that is not physically present and not electronically present. We'll have to identify the electronic means of communication, which is probably going to be Zoom, I assume. And in the minutes also state that the public attended, observed the meeting, and the meeting was not held in executive session. The means that the members of the governing body participated will also have to be listed again. That's probably going to be Zoom. And all votes taken will have to be made by roll call vote. I think those are the high points. I'll answer any questions that you have. I think I've kind of belabored my concerns, but again, I think we'll be okay as we go along and we use this procedure. We'll get better at it. Any questions for me?
Thank you. I'll start with a question, and that is, would you like to confirm that our budget decision meeting must be an in-person meeting?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay,
that has to be in person.
And I believe that any adoption of a budget proposal by the board or any changes to it would have to be in person, right?
That is correct as well.
Any other questions?
Important questions, and as we get closer to budget season, which is coming along very quickly.
Oh, it starts today for us.
Yeah. Here we are in July.
Yeah. So, well,
Any other questions?
I see none. But Mr. McGlasson has one.
Not necessarily a question. I guess having heard this information, had this discussion, I just would ask the board. I guess as we moving into the next meeting, the August meeting, which has to be an in-person meeting because of the expected vote on the budget, but by that meeting, I would ask for some direction, consensus from the board. That, from my perspective, for previous discussions, I think the intent is to just, we would have all meetings moving forward be hybrid meetings, unless something occurs like a budget vote or where it can't be. But for the purposes of noticing things, it's easier for staff and requires fewer notices if we know all meetings are going to be a certain format moving forward, because we can just advertise once for the remaining meetings of the year, or as we get into next year, once for all of the meetings, and then just do one or two amended notices if circumstances change and we have to do something other than a hybrid meeting.
That sounds good. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, maybe one of my county colleagues can tell us whether the Nat U Hill room is set up for hybrid meetings so that, people who are not there, be it board members or members of the public, can still participate and be seen and heard.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, Nat U Hill and our other meeting rooms around the county are set up for hybrid meetings. So even if everyone is required to be present for a budget vote, for example, the public can still watch via Zoom and participate and offer comment.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay, then. Oh, Ms. Piedmont Smith again.
Oh, well, I don't know, President Munson, if you wanted to take kind of a pulse of the board members as to whether Mr. McGlasson is correct in assuming that we do want hybrid
Right.
meetings. I would agree
Right.
with that, but I don't know if everybody does.
Okay, Mr. McGlasson, did we act on this at a prior meeting?
When the last month or the month before, after the state made the changes to the open door law, the board did pass a resolution establishing the required policy for the board to have the hybrid meetings in accordance with the new open door law. But I don't know that it had necessarily established that we were going to always have hybrid meetings.
Okay.
Unless otherwise dictated or required.
Okay, so I think it would be fine to take the step of clarifying that. And thank you, Ms. Piedmont Smith. Would you like to offer a motion?
Sure. I move that the Solid Waste Management Board of Directors hold their board meetings in a hybrid format, starting with the September meeting, I guess. Well, no, we start with the August meeting because it'll be hybrid for members of the public.
Does that make sense, Mr. Baker?
Well, I think as you rightly alluded to with your question, we have to have, when matters of, when budgetary matters are being considered, they have to be dealt with in the traditional, under the traditional procedure followed before the public health emergency for public meetings. So that would be a concern that I would have about that.
But isn't there a
I don't
difference
think that the
between,
public would be prohibited from,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
go
So
ahead.
maybe I can slightly amend my motion in that I move that the Board of Directors hold their meetings in a hybrid format unless required by law to be that all the board members be present in person. Is that?
Could I ask a real quick question for clarification, because that may change my thoughts here?
Yes.
Will a budget be adopted during the August meeting, or will it just be discussed?
No, it should be adopted at
Okay.
that time
Well, I think
because,
to clarify, technically this board does not adopt a budget.
right, we don't adopt, but we recommend a budget.
The county council has the binding authority on the budget, and this board in essence approves the budget and gives the budget backing for staff to go present to the council, but the council
Okay.
actually does the adoption.
Well, the statute, the enabling statute requires a traditional public meeting in instances where a budget will be adopted. The conservative side of me, which is my lawyer, the lawyer side of my mind, wants you to be cautious, and the fact that you're going to be to recommend a budget for adoption, you kind of have to come to a final decision as a body about what your recommendation is going to be. I guess I would prefer, from my seat, that you conduct that meeting in the traditional, under the traditional procedure, but it's your decision how you go. I think I would prefer that to be a traditional public meeting. But the statute says adoption of a budget, so I can't say that you would be wrong if you conduct it under the hybrid procedure.
Ms. Jones?
When you say a traditional public meeting, do you mean that the public will not be able to use Zoom to be a part of the meeting?
No, I don't. The only limitation, there is no limitation on the public's participation in our public meetings. They can participate in person or remotely. The only limitation is on the governing bodies, the public bodies, and how they carry out their meetings. Does that answer your question?
Mhm. Yes.
Great.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I think that, I guess the definition, the technicality of adoption aside, there's nothing to prohibit a member of the governing body to be present electronically. They just can't participate in the vote that would be required on the budget.
That is correct. You would need, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. So there's not a definitive answer. The statute says adoption of a budget. You're not technically adopting a budget. You're really adopting a recommendation to adopt a budget. Isn't that fair?
Mhm. So
I think you could conduct that meeting under the hybrid procedure. It just makes me a little nervous, but you could do it. Tom, do you have thoughts about that? I guess
I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think under the strict interpretation, we could do that via a hybrid meeting, but I think that the better safe than sorry and an better optics option would be to do it the traditional way.
That would be my preference.
Commissioner Thomas has her hand up.
Yeah, if I might, we had a resolution that we adopted in a number of not only by the Board of Commissioners, but also a number of our boards and commissions themselves adopted a similar document. Is there any reason why we just don't adopt that? Because it has an explanation of how many meetings you have to attend, how many you can attend electronically in a row. It has an explanation of how this only comes into effect once the governor's order allows in-person meetings to occur. I mean, is there some reason why we're not using that document? Because that was something that other entities have used.
Right. So before Mr. McGlasson answers, I'd like to say it's my memory that we did adopt a comparable resolution at our prior meeting.
Yes,
So-
I'm trying to.
Why isn't that sufficient then?
So
I'm sorry. What was? I missed Ms. Tom or Commissioner Thomas. I missed your comment.
I just didn't know why that wasn't sufficient, why we need to do something else right now. It just seems like we've already covered our bases then.
mhm.
I did not remember that we actually passed that. I know we talked about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure the resolution, the policy adopted by this board is going to be almost identical to all those other that you referenced, because I think it was, I mean, the county attorney's office provided the language used as a template for all those boards and commissions that passed this policy, adopted this policy.
Ms.
So
Piedmont
does
Smith?
it? Oh, sorry.
Piedmont Smith has her hand up.
Yes.
Well, I think Mr. McGlasson just wanted to know, like, we have the policy, we understand the rules. I think Mr. McGlasson was just asking, does that mean we do want to have the hybrid meeting option whenever we can have that option?
Yes,
Is that-
yeah.
Right?
Do we just want the standard to be that this is the format we're going to use? Because then we can do bulk advertising notices and then just do amendments as we need to, versus having to do, publish a notice every month as each meeting comes up, and we determine how we want to do it.
So I don't even know if we need the motion that has by now probably been forgotten. I put forward. I mean, it could just be a consensus sort of thing, you know, if everybody kind of agrees that, yes, we'd like to do hybrid when we can.
And I think that's all that I'm asking. If there's a consensus amongst the members that, yeah, this is what we want to do, then staff will move forward under that assumption, and we'll, if we need to publish amended notices periodically, we can do that. But that would be, from my perspective, that would be preferable to having to do a notice in advance of every meeting.
Right. That sounds good.
Commissioner Thomas, do you
So
have a
do
dog
we-
there that you're playing with?
So do we have general consensus, or do you wish to take a vote on this? Any comments? I'm gathering this is general consensus, and we're going with the resolution that we adopted at the last meeting, which our minute state is identical to the resolution that the commissioners adopted and recommended to us. So I think we are ready to move on with this, and Mr. McGlasson has the general advice that he needs about providing notices. And now we can pay attention to minutes. The first minutes are the executive committee meeting minutes for June 28th, and those are included in your packet for your information. The second minutes are the board minutes for June 10th, 2021. And it would be good to have a motion here to discuss these. Ms. Piedmont Smith,
I move approval of the Board of Director meeting minutes from June 10th, 2021.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments about this? Okay, on page 3 of your packet, it describes very briefly our action on the resolution regarding public meetings. So let's take a vote without further questions. And as usual, all our votes will in the future be voice votes called by our director. Mr. McGlasson?
Piedmont Smith,
I'll abstain because I wasn't there.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move now to the controller's report and begin with a discussion of cash flow. Hello, Ms. Martin.
Hello. On page 8 of the packet is the cash flow statement, and I actually sent out a revised one yesterday because we did receive the landfill bank statement, so I updated that. So the updated cash flows are on the operating account. We have $2,185,677.76. In the savings account, the balance is $1,123.76. Balance in the closure bond debt account is $182,139.53. The balance in the capital accounts, $45,413.60. And as on the revised statement, you can see the landfill balance is $759,506.21. Yesterday, I sent a listing of the pre-approved claims in the amount of $106,520.35, along with the current week's claims of $4,947.87 for the total claims to be approved of $111,468.22. Are there any questions regarding any of the claims for us?
I will apologize that we forgot the operational cash flow graph chart, flow chart in this packet. I apologize, just an omission in the scramble to get it all together over a holiday weekend.
Right. So I think we can do without the graphic representation for a month. So questions about any elements of these claims? Ms. Piedmont Smith.
I'm sorry, were you talking about the cash flow or the claims?
Ms. Martin covered the cash flow and then the claims. So together. So either component.
Well, I did have a question about the rental revenues. Because they just seem so uneven. Can Mr. McGlasson maybe explain? I assume that's from the part of the building that we rent to the Purdue Outreach Services.
The bulk of it is, yes, and that is they pay us quarterly. The county pays us quarterly under that lease agreement. But also in there, we do get some rental income from, oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank on the natural gas company's name, but there's a natural gas, for lack of a better term, storage facility, natural cavities underground that are under part of the landfill property. And the gas company does lease that from us, and we do get rental income from them for them using that space that's under the landfill property.
Okay, so that's the $398.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
March, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
do they also pay that bi-monthly or quarterly? Or?
And I apologize, I don't know, and it's not regular enough that I don't know that Kathy would have. That would probably be something that Connie would be in the best position to answer, and unfortunately she's out this week, and so.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I know that I just billed because we bill quarterly for the rent, and that's the 1950, 1951. It varies by $1 depending on what quarter it is. The rent is 1950. So I do not know because I haven't dealt with that. That came in March, which was before me. So I'm not 100% sure about that. I have to double check. I can look it up.
When Connie gets back, we can look into that and we can provide some information on that next month if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, or you can just send us an email about it.
Okay.
Sure.
There was one other thing on the cash flow under the expenses. I see there's a line called payroll, excuse me, payroll fringe / liability, that there's no budget for that. Could you explain that a little more for us, please? We have about 17,467 in expenditures there, but it was not budgeted.
Kathy, are you prepared to speak to that, or do you want me to try to address that?
I'm in the process of trying to revamp the cash flow statement because that's something that was kind of put there to account for the, we think the employer portion of the payroll liabilities, but I'm working on a different presentation of the cash flow statement to hopefully help alleviate that and to kind of answer some of those questions.
So since we're going into the new budget for 2022, I just want to make sure if there's something we need to cover, that we cover it either in that line or change the expense line and cover it appropriately. That was my concern there.
You know,
And I don't think there is.
it's accounted for in the budget, and it's part of it is the issue with how things are grouped in order to get this to fit on one sheet. I mean, if we showed every line item in the budget, this would be about 3 sheets of expenses. So some things are grouped, but as Kathy referenced, that is that's the employer portion of payroll taxes and Social Security. That's what appears to be falling into that line when Connie was preparing the cash flow sheets, and we have recognized some of the confusion, that probably led to your question, and so that's why Kathy's working on reformatting this, and hopefully some of that will be a little more straightforward when you look at these statements.
We're
All right.
transitioning to from a cash basis of accounting to an accrual basis of accounting. So hopefully we're required to report that way. And hopefully that's going to alleviate the necessity of some of these things. And I'll be able to make that a little more transparent. I'm working on a way to keep it similar enough that it will be easy to transition for the board, but give us enough information and still keep us in the reporting requirements that we have in the accrual basis.
Can you repeat that? You're moving from what to what as far as record keeping?
From the cash basis of accounting to the accrual basis of accounting.
So I have a question on that, Ms. Martin. Is this recommended by the state, the accrual method?
It's required.
Well, that's a strong recommendation then. Thank you.
Ms. Munson, if you'd like, I can go ahead and make a motion to approve payroll and claims.
Okay, thank you. Let's ask if there are any other questions before the motion, then we'll do that. I see no hands. Please offer a motion then.
I move approval of payroll and claims as presented in the board packet, in addition to what was emailed to us yesterday.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. McGlasson, would you please call the roll call vote?
Lawford,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Munson.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. And thank you, Miss Martin.
You're welcome.
And especially for the extra work that's going to be needed to change accounting systems.
We'll get it done.
Good, thank you. Our next agenda item is the Solid Waste Management Plan update. And we'll turn to Mr. McGlasson, who provided a lot of information for us in the packet.
Yeah, and I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I got first draft of the plan was put out in Dropbox, and a link was sent to all board and CAC members and some staff members about a month ago. And out of that, the executive committee and Joe Winnie, CAC chair, at the executive committee meeting, reviewed that document and the comments and suggestions that had been submitted from the Dropbox document. And then out of all of that, you have the version that's also been uploaded to Dropbox, but is in the board packet, that has addressed a number of the suggestions and revisions and questions that were brought up through the executive committee meeting. There are still some comments in the draft that's in the packet for items that I have not been addressed or that I wasn't sure how to address. And that's what we have. And so it's here for your review, your suggestions, your questions, your comments, and then the hope would be to come out of this meeting and be able to put together a final draft of the proposed plan update for the board to consider for adoption at the August meeting. And I don't, if I'm not sure if you want to go through this and I guess comment by comment with what's in that draft, page by page. If people just want to throw out comments and questions, however the board wishes to proceed with reviewing this, it's your pleasure.
Well, I think we should do this in an organized fashion rather than jump around into the draft plan. So how about we just take the comments one at a time, or at least topics at a time. In your packet on page 29, I see the first comment under the mission statement. And if you all will refer to that and see if you have a recommendation. One question had to do with whether the phrase eliminating waste was realistic. Perhaps it should be reducing waste.
Can I jump in on this real fast, or
Yes.
Ms. Piedmont-Smith? Do you want to?
Yeah, if I may, the comments in the lavender color are from me, and I didn't realize that the mission statement was just verbatim what is our mission statement. So so it becomes a bigger question of, do we want to revise our mission statement? Maybe we could address that later and not necessarily as part of this plan. I didn't, remember that our mission statement said eliminating waste going to final disposal. It does seem rather quixotic to say that. And then just the comment about communities just seemed a little odd to me, but it's kind of a separate question since our mission statement is what it is at the moment.
It is, and I would offer though that if there's a desire to revise or update our mission statement, the plan update is to me an ideal time to do that.
Yeah.
And not to make the August meeting too busy. We could certainly work on, staff could work on a revision, vet that with the executive committee at their meeting. And we could present that mission statement to the board under a resolution at the August meeting before the solid waste management plan is presented to the board, and have that new mission statement be a part of the updated solid waste management plan, if there's a desire to update or change the mission statement.
Other comments from anyone? Well, I would offer my comment that I think the lavender recommendations are good ones. Certainly more realistic and a better fit for our district. Ms. Piedmont-Smith?
Yes, I would also encourage us to add something about global climate change to this document. to the mission statement if we are of a will to revise it. Is securing a healthier environment, you know, is all fine and good, but it's kind of an old-fashioned mindset at this point, that it's just about our environment and not about the existence of our life as we know it, you know. So I would be in favor of putting something about you know, how this fits in with climate change in our mission statement.
Okay, well, it's very hard to write as a committee on the fly. And so I think it would be a good idea to take this to the executive committee and then to bring this back to the board as the mission statement revised at our next meeting. Ms. Thomas?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you want to give some sort of a deadline or something for board members to provide comments to
Oh,
the executive committee. That might be helpful.
Right.
So you have everybody's comments that you can work from.
I was going to do that at the end of the discussion about this draft plan to come up with something, but let's just do this now. I don't have the date of the executive committee meeting in front of me, but I believe it's around August.
August 2nd.
Okay. So could we please have those comments by July 31st? Would that work for everybody?
Could we get them earlier than that?
Yeah, yeah.
That we have time
Okay.
to,
Yeah, and that August 2nd meeting that in the under normal schedule, that I would prepare and email out the packet for that meeting on July the 30th, the Friday before.
Okay. Any recommendations as to the date?
I
What
mean, I guess
about,
noon on the 30th, or would that? I guess if I'm honest with myself, I won't look at this until that weekend anyway.
let's be honest.
But I think we need to give Mr. McGlasson time to do a few things too.
Yeah, so maybe the 29th or the 28th.
But end of the day, the 29th should be sufficient.
Good. Okay. So please, everyone, address the mission statement and any comments you'd like to make on the draft plan itself by that time. Okay, we'll move on to the next comments, which are on page 31 of the packet, and I'll let you all just read for yourselves. These seem to be formatting issues.
Yeah, the first lavender comment is already taken care of, I believe.
Mhm.
I thought we were taking the pie charts out, right?
Yeah,
That's what we recommended.
the first, I apologize, the first lavender comment I did address. I should have deleted that one out before this went into packet, and I forgot to do that. But so, yeah, so it's that second one where the percentages on some of those pie charts are hard to read. And then, if I remember correctly, at the executive committee meeting, that discussion evolved into, are the graphics even necessary? They're nice. They you know, they add a little color and pizzazz, but if we eliminated those, that would, a lot of those, we could probably bring all of those population tables up into one table and be able to shorten the document by a half a page to a page.
Okay. So is the plan to eliminate the pie charts? Or just eliminate the percentages in the pies?
Thought the executive committee was recommending eliminating the pie charts altogether.
Okay. Does anyone have any objections? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, they're all gone. Okay. Next comments are way far ahead. I'm just scrolling through trying to get to them. It is on page 40. Goals and objectives. The comment is the bullet point list is too long, has too much detail for this document.
Yeah, that's something that was discussed in the comments and then discussed at the executive committee meeting, and just that's little bit more involved to address that, and so that's not something I was able to get to before I put it in the packet, but there seems to be some consensus, and I unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is our CAC's goals and objectives, and Joe's out there trying to get in. I'm not sure, he's having trouble rejoining the meeting. But the consensus that we would, I guess, shorten those, have some more broad general statements addressing what the goals and objectives are, and then potentially have either appendices to the plan or just some separate guidance documents that would be more specific of more specific goals and objectives and how we would go about addressing those that would fall within those broader general descriptions in the plan.
Okay. Any comments from anyone regarding this section on goals and objectives?
I guess I would like to ask, more broadly, does anybody have any issues with the goals and objectives that are in there? Does anybody think that there's additional goals and objectives that are not in the plan that we should look at incorporating?
So again, I think it's hard to come up with this on the fly since this covers several pages of very thoughtful proposals. And any elements of the plan people should be able to comment upon before that July 29th deadline.
Yeah, and like I said, this document is in a Word version, is in Dropbox. If anybody needs me to resend them, or I can just resend the link to all CAC and board members as a matter of course after this meeting for people to access that Word document, if that would help them review it and comments and suggestions. Commissioner Thomas has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Are these goals and objectives listed by priority? or by the length of time it will complete them? How are they listed?
Well, now that Joe is back in the meeting, like I said, most of that is from the CAC subcommittee groups, and I think they're more grouped by topic. But then
Mhm.
Mr. Whitney, regarding the goals and objectives, is there I guess a rhyme or reason to the order that they're listed in?
Yeah, sorry, I want to quick verify. Can you hear me all right? I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties at the moment.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. In general, the major groups that we organize them in are according to the subcommittees that were held to discuss those topics, as Mr. McGlasson had just mentioned. And the prioritization was in general among those 4 topics according to what were considered the highest priority in terms of the most effective topics. So waste reduction being the most important of them, and education, I believe, is how they were aligned, but nothing within that organization is essential. They can be adjusted as the board sees fit or as is more logical. Does that answer the question adequately?
Mhm.
So these are all goals to be attained within the next 5 years, right? Or are there any more specific timelines in here? I didn't see, well, didn't really see.
There
any
are.
There is actually on page 46. There's a
Oh, I do see timelines. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are a few items that have among the, so there's generally means of achievement, capital and operational costs, metrics, and then some of them have a timeline attribute listed to try to prioritize some of them that will have a higher impact earlier or sooner than later, or that have a sort of sequential component where one of them is to be organized before the others.
So I'll call attention to the top of page 46, which says achieve 1 completed usable waste stream diversion within plan period. That must be within 5 years. That's an example.
Ms. Munson?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Maybe it would be helpful for board members to get back to Mr. McGlasson as to what level of detail, what information you feel should be in the actual plan and what could be in a separate document that will just guide us in more detail and guide the CAC's work. Because it was my feeling that there were too many details to include in a broad plan. And I think given,
So you're talking about,
but I want to, should we have the timeline in there? I mean, that to me, that seems important, but do we need to have all those other details? That's something we could gather some feedback on in the coming weeks.
so by the other details, are you referring to the means of achievement, the metrics,
Yeah.
or both?
Yeah, the means of achievement, the capital operation costs, and the metrics.
And so those you see as being extracted and put into a separate appendix.
Well, I guess I would say on, you know, I mean, I would certainly welcome, you know, board comments and input on how much or how little detail they'd like to see in here. But some of this does have to at least be referenced according to the statute. You know, the statute does you know, require you know, that you show how you're going to, in essence, pay to achieve these things. So, you know, there's a, you know, doesn't mean you have to lay out a full budget, but you do need to show that you have a plan in place to cover anticipated costs of achieving a goal. You know, that's, and as you could see from the example plans from other districts, you know, how you go about doing that runs the gamut. But you know, some of that stuff, you know, there's a reference in the statute for it, and I think that's why, you know, the CAC wound up putting a lot of that stuff in there. But you know, I agree, and I think that we talked during the executive committee meeting that too much detail in there can pigeonhole us or put us in a bind if our circumstances change. And you know, you can always, you know, any of these goals and objectives can be achieved under much more broad and general descriptions in the plan itself.
So, Mr. McGlasson, you're saying that referencing means of achievement and metrics are required by the plan?
Yeah, I don't have the statute
required in the plan.
I don't have the statute in front of me right now. I apologize. I just recall that there are references in the statute to some of these things being included, and like I said, I would welcome, you know, the board comments and input on all of that. But when it comes to actually putting pen to paper, we'll definitely reference the statute and make sure that we're complying with the requirements of the statute for the plan.
Okay. Well, it's hard to ask the board members to give you their thoughts on whether details should be moved out or kept in without knowing this.
Well, I can find it.
It's
So-
in the CAC Board of Directors joint meeting packet for January 14th. I just found it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought we were going to have it in today's meeting packet as well, but I didn't.
We may have discussed that at the executive committee meeting, and I missed that, and I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, so like I see 13-21-5-13, 3A, you know, the plan has to set forth a description of the following: the operational costs and capital costs of implementing the district plan, the proposed means of financing the implementation of the district plan, set forth basis of setting fees, rates, and charge. I don't think we have anything like that in there, but you know, so there are references in there, you know, to I guess implying some level of detail is required, you know, when describing how the plan is going to be implemented and moved forward.
I think the operational costs, looking at the state statute, we probably need to put a dollar amount next to these objectives, rather than just say it's going to cost staff time and whatever, which putting a dollar amount is very tricky, I know, but if it says operational costs.
I'm not aware of any district that has actually done that.
Right.
Okay.
I was gonna say that I haven't seen that in any of the plans that we've looked at.
So we could perhaps interpret somewhat loosely the Indiana code requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing that could possibly happen would be the state comes back and says, that's not adequate, do it again.
I would be very
Oh, no.
surprised if that would happen.
If they were paying attention, they would have come back to us quite a long
15 years ago.
Yeah.
They're a little
I
behind
will-
in monitoring this.
Mhm.
The section 1321.5-13 does say set forth a description of the following operational costs and capital costs. So it says a description more so than a value, a monetary
Mhm.
value
Mhm.
in terms of degree of precision. But one thing, to your point, Ms. Piedmont Smith, that the proposed means of financing the implementation, I believe, are absent, to my recollection, at least within the scope of the CAC's recommendations. I don't think I saw a precision of means of financing in the draft plan either. Mr. McGlasson, you can correct me if I'm mistaken.
No, I agree with you. I don't think there is, and then again, the proposed means of financing could, be as simple as we'll absorb it into our existing operating budget. It's,
Sure.
and I think, and in maybe not quite as bluntly, but I think that's what a lot of the districts have done in a roundabout way. That's how they've addressed that particular section of the statute.
That does sound like an adequate solution.
Mhm.
And and the other thing, we're not, yeah, we have things in there, and we'll see how detailed we are in the final draft. Yeah, there's things in there that are going to cost money, but we're not talking about building a new facility here. We're not talking about huge costs or ongoing operational costs to achieve any of these goals and objectives at this point. So, yeah, I mean, is it going to cost more than we normally do to branch out and increase, some of our media and outreach? Yeah, but I don't think so much that we can't reallocate some money to cover it.
Okay. Well, let's continue further through this. See if there's anything that jumps out at anyone to comment on during this meeting, because we still have to get to our budget proposal. So I can see by the lavender that Ms. Piedmont Smith did a lot of work, and I want to thank her for this.
I guess, just since we're all here at the meeting, I guess I would ask on page 49 of the packet, which is the last page of the plan, that very last section, implementation, surveillance, and enforcement. If the board, and since Rondi and Joe were here, the CAC are comfortable with how that is worded.
That just means that we need to pay attention to the plan, which we hadn't done.
I mean, but that is
for all,
that
for all the
section is
years I've been on the board.
Well, that section is a specific requirement in the statute of who's responsible for
Okay.
implementing the plan and who's responsible for making sure that we are implementing the plan and moving it forward. So
Mhm. Well, I think
Yeah,
this
I
is a
would
good
also say
exercise for us. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, maybe in this section, we could be a little bit more specific and say, you know, once a year, the board will review progress towards the goals enumerated in a plan or something like that. And also the term surveillance seems very odd to me, so maybe we can explain what we mean by that. I know that's in statute, but it's just.
Could we say, is the board and the CAC charged with surveillance and enforcement of this plan on an annual basis?
Well, what does surveillance
we-
mean other than enforcement? I mean,
That means look it over and
that's the language
Surveillance
out of the statute.
well, maybe we can
Right.
just add a sentence saying, in other words, the board and the CAC will make sure that the district's activities comport with the plan or something like that. You know, let's use plain English.
So we can do that. We want to add a sentence in there that is basically going to direct the board and the CAC to annually just kind of review where the district is in accordance with its plan. Something to that effect.
Yes.
I was just typing a note there. Okay, thank you. So in the interest of time and the rest of our agenda, does anybody have anything further regarding our steps for sending in our comments by July 29th? And then the executive committee meeting on August 2nd to review everybody's comments and make changes that will bring back to the board at the next meeting.
If I may, Ms. Munson, I just wanted to ask the CIC members who are here today if the section on final disposal facilities, if that could be formatted and a few things added so that it's matches the previous sections. I know that was a different committee that Joe wasn't on, but maybe they could take another look at that section at their next meeting.
I can, to that response, be sure that that is added to the agenda for the subsequent CAC meeting, which is this coming week, a week from today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I would just add to that. I mean, I think that whole, based on the discussion today, that whole goals and objectives section is going to go through some major revision and reformatting. So we'll just make sure that all the sections are formatted the same way. Joe has his hand up.
Yes, I do. Yes, with respect to that formatting and the inquiry about how to best present the information in terms of what's required by the plan and what's too detailed, is there a conclusion that I can take back to the CAC for this coming week's meeting in terms of how to filter that information?
I don't know at this time. I think that was, that was part of the board's purpose in asking for a deadline to submit comments and stuff, because they don't want to make decisions on the fly. So, Joe, I think that's just, as I get comments in from the board, see what we get in before the CAC
Well, I think
meeting
it's
next week.
important to involve this.
We'll see what comments come in before the CAC meeting next week, and I can work with you and or that final disposal subcommittee as we start to put the next draft of this plan together, and we'll just make sure that everything in that section is all formatted in the same manner.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So I think it's important to continue to involve the CAC in this. And I would ask if Mr. Winia or Ms. Cox, if they could attend the August 2nd executive committee meeting.
I will just need to verify my availability, and if I am able to, I will absolutely do so.
I think Mr. Winia has been at more of those meetings than he's missed since he's been chair. So
I think so too. But this is a key meeting.
I'm sorry, Rondi, I cut you off.
I was just asking what time the meeting is on the 2nd.
5 o'clock, 5 p.m.
Okay, I may be able to. I'll have to check.
Okay. So do we have a plan about the plan going forward? July 2nd, noon is the time for people to submit their comments.
July 29th at noon.
The executive committee, pardon?
July 29th.
Did I say 2nd? July 29th. And the executive committee will meet August 2nd. And hopefully also with members of the CAC, and to compile a revised draft.
And I have confirmed that I will be available for that date and time.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely.
So if there's nothing further on this plan until we meet again, let's then move to the next items on the agenda. That is the CAC report, and then followed by the department report.
I will begin with the CAC report, and in brief, it is brief, and I have little to add to it. We were essentially unable to convene, so we haven't been able to exchange much, but what we were hoping to discuss then and what we plan to discuss at next week's meeting will be the CAC's budget, or the CAC's portion of the district's budget for our internal discussion and proposals, and then revisiting the 5-year plan recommendations. And the intent was to make a CAC collective approval of the plan or the proposal as it exists, but we may just as well make the amendments then before approving that. And that is all we have on the agenda.
Okay.
Are there any questions about CAC activities? All right, thank you for the opportunity to report.
Thank you, Mr. Winia, and thank you to all the CAC members who have worked so hard on putting together the components of this plan. Much appreciation to all of you. Next, we'll have department reports and begin with Mr. McGlasson.
Yeah, not a whole lot, just a couple things to highlight from the report in the packet that, the district again had we had a booth at the fair again this year, and had a number of staff members that helped out with staffing that throughout the week, and thought it was productive. I know that some of you were out there as well. I think we kind of felt that the flow of people to the commercial building was down a little bit from what we remember from 2 years ago and previous years, but we still had a number of visitors to our table and handed out a number of reusable bags and many recycle bags. And also just a public thank you to Tom Fagola from the Bloomington Fire Department for providing fire extinguisher training to our staff on July the 1st. That's really all that I had for my report, but happy to answer any questions.
I did see a number of people walking around with the bags that you were handing out. That felt good.
Mr. McGlasson, I would like to interrupt.
Uh-oh.
So I have, I'm having a great deal of trouble hearing people. Many of their voices are frozen as well as their faces. So I turned my video off in the hopes of correcting this, but everybody still looks frozen to me. And I hope I don't miss out on too many words, but I know I have been. It's been a real struggle. So
I'm having much the same problem, so I'm going to turn off my video also.
So, Ms. Piedmont Smith, I'm going to go try something on the computer. Would you take over for a minute?
Sure.
Except I can't hear you whether you say yes or no.
Yes. So are there any questions on the administration department's report? Then we can move on to, I guess Scott Morgan isn't here, Mr. McGlasson, is that right?
He is not, but I'd like to point out for him that he noted in his memo, and then you can see in the recycling spreadsheets that are attached that Republic is still a little bit behind in getting the data to us. That's a situation that we're working on because it's also causing some confusion with their accounting department because the accounting department says we're delinquent on paying bills we haven't received yet. So that's something we're working with on them so that they need their right and left hand, I think, need to get figure out what each other's doing so that they know the timing of when invoices are submitted to us. But we'll get that up to date as quick as we can.
All right, thank you. Mr. Paulson, would you like to give your report, please?
Hey, Lee Paulson, landfill director, compliance director. Just some stuff to highlight is that we finally have all the lab results back from the May groundwater sampling event. Those have all been forwarded to AECOM for their statistical analysis. And just from a quick note from their person there, nothing looks to be anything out of line from what we've sampled and have data for in the past. So we're just trying to, there's nothing I can do about it, but we're just trying to keep doing those reports. So that's the big highlight. The treatment plant roof is damaged from some stuff over the winter, and it's got a big leak in it. Not a big leak, but it's got a leak that we're, once the weather gets clear enough, Steve's Roofing is going to be able to get out and re-roof that building so that we can get that fixed. So.
Cheryl, you're back.
I am back, and I got to hear the end of Mr. Paulson's report. Thank you. And I hope it's just terrible not being able to hear. It's fine not being able to see, but we have lost 2 members of the board for our budget discussion. That's Mr. Swafford and Ms. Thomas. And that is the next item on our agenda, and that to review the proposed budget. So I think Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had a question on Mr. Paulson's report.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was hard to come back in. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to make sure, since there are 2 things at the landfill that were kind of unplanned, the roof and then the erosion from the storm that we had in June. So I just wanted to make sure we're okay on our budget for covering those items.
Yeah. Yes, we are. So there's, we are always doing some type of repair or something like that after big rain events at the landfill for things like that. So those things we budget in for those what ifs kind of stuff like that to make sure that we have it to take care of it. One of the spots is pretty significant to get back to monitoring well number 10. It washed away like half a road. So that's going to take Mr. Anderson a little bit of time to fix, but we have the materials there and stuff like that. He's just going to have to dig it back and put it back where it went before it washed away. So.
All right, thank you. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, you can see I'm anxious to get to the budget proposal. And are we ready now to begin that, Mr. McGlasson?
Oh, if I have to. Yeah, we can. Let me.
I thought you had a PowerPoint and you were ready to go.
I am. I just need to get my screen shared. And did that? Everybody see the first slide there?
Yes.
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 Okay. You have a memo in your packet that does kind of outline, summarize some of the for the operating budget, some of the changes that they'll all be done in more detail as we go through the slide. So I don't know that I see a need to go through that memo. I will point out, I apologize that on page 52 of the packet, which is the draft operating budget, I forgot to update that heading after we got the actual growth quotient from DLGF. So it says a 2% growth quotient, but that those numbers there do actually reflect a 4.3% growth quotient. So apologize for that. So moving through the budget, kind of a summary overview. These numbers should match what's on the comparison spreadsheets that are in the packet. Tax increase of 82,000. That is the 4.3% growth quotient from DLGF. I said we'll go through these differences in more detail. Some increase in fees from HHW and recycling are projected. A small decrease in our sale of recyclables. personnel expenses go up as they tend to do every year. Again, we'll go through the small increases in the bottom line of all those categories. But there are some, as we go through it, you'll see there are a few lines that did have some major swings, some up and some down. Again, as I said, the tax increases, well, I didn't update a number there, but it is the 4.3% growth quotient, which is the 82,000. Apologize, that 38,000 is a leftover. I forgot to update. But not projecting any increase in the vehicle excise or CVET tax line. And I will. I'm not seeing my Zoom right now, so if you have questions or comments, unfortunately, just kind of need to jump in or hold them till the end. So, small increase in our Freon removal. Based on just what we've experienced the past year and a half, 2 years. A pretty good decrease in GBN network. Unfortunately, that's just where our membership is going. Something we're trying to find a way to go out and increase our participation in that. Small decrease in our. Does everybody understand what our CESQG disposal is?
I had to look that up, but yes.
So basically, when we take HHW from small businesses, they pay fees for us to do that, and that's where that revenue comes from. So, once I did a new, I guess not new line, but a new revenue, paint disposal. It's not generally something that we have ever budgeted for, but looking at the history of that, you know, and you can see in the comparison sheets included in the packet, you know, for the past 3 or 4 years, we have always generated in excess of $2,000 of revenue from the fees people pay us to dispose of. It's specifically latex paint or paint that's commercially generated that comes to us. So I just thought it appropriate to budget some revenue for that. And then the next item there is a potential new revenue line item, a tire recycling fee. As we've gone through the plan and looked at some of the problems facing Monroe County, waste tires is a common theme. We get calls about waste tires routinely. We don't currently have a program to deal with them, but it seems like there's limited options for residents that have tires to get rid of them if they're not purchasing new tires from a local shop. So 5,000 is just kind of a guesstimate, and you'll see when we get into the expense side, there's an identical expense line on that, and would anticipate that to be a wash. But if the budget is approved with that in there, we'll work with a legal counsel and work to develop a waste tire program and appropriate fees that are in accordance with the state statute that's referenced in the memo that governs the conditions under which we can provide waste management services. And then a $15,000 increase in the PPU bag fee. That's our orange bag program. That's, you know, we had the fee increase going into 2020. And looking at the 2020 sales volume and where we are year to date, kind of projecting that we're going to see a little bump in that revenue next year. Host fee stays the same. The rental income stays the same. Again, we don't have a sale of recyclables revenue line any longer at this time, and not projecting any changes for glass and metal, and are seeing a bit of a decrease in our battery revenue. So we dropped that a little bit for 2022. And that is your revenue lines. Any questions on the revenue lines?
Is the decrease in the batteries because people are using less batteries or because we're getting less money for them?
Unfortunately, I don't have that answer. That would be a Scott question. And he's out this week. We can get that information for you. I don't know if it's a volume, if the changes in volume or the changes in the money we're receiving for them. I just see the dollar amounts, and I did not ask Scott for that data, but I can do that and get that information to you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, so on to the expenses. For the personnel services, this budget does include increasing the district's minimum rate of pay to $15 an hour, which was a goal that the board set 3 years ago, I think, to try to provide a more of a living wage standard to its employees. Also included is a $900 flat wage increase based on the CPIW wage index we've historically used to calculate increases. I will say that I did it a little differently this year. Historically, we've just looked at January to January difference, but the only thing I know to relate it to is the impact of COVID. But the January increase was like 1.3, 1.4% for 2020 into 21. And for May, it was like 5.3%. So obviously there's been a huge increase in the first part of this year. So what I did, I took the average increase for January through May, or I took each of those increases and came up with an average of a 3.2%. I applied that to the median wage for district employees, and that's how we came up with the $900 wage increase. And then, as we've done historically, brought the bottom end up to that $15 per hour minimum rate of pay, and then made some additional incremental adjustments to recognize existing pay differences relating to the differing skill levels and responsibilities of the jobs. And then also usually another big hit for us is health insurance. We are percentage-wise, we're looking at a pretty substantial increase this year, 13%. And then I'll apologize to the executive committee. This is a little different than what you looked at your meeting. I looked at it a little more closely after the executive committee meeting and realized that with the restructuring at South Walnut, where we left that one position vacant, and at this point there's no plans to fill that position. I had not taken that into account with our enrollment. So when you look at our current enrollment and adjust for that, that 13% only results in a $25,000 increase from 21 into 22. So not quite as bad as I think it was 40 or 45,000 that the executive committee initially saw on the first draft of this. So the lessen that blow a little bit. So there you see your wage increase, just shy of $28,000. That's with the $900 increase and a $15 an hour minimum rate of pay. Dropping the overtime a little bit. We don't historically spend that much money on an annual basis on overtime. And the longevity is dropping a little bit. That has to do with some of the staffing changes. The taxes, the Medicare, they're tied directly to what our wages are. So they increase because the wages went up. Employment come down a little bit. We have what I consider to be a very good unemployment rate at 0.09%. And then you can see the $25,000 increase on health insurance. The wellness clinics coming down a little bit. That's we accidentally miscalculated. That was over budgeted for 2021. So bringing that in line with what our rate structure is for 2022. Retirement goes up, again, tied directly to the wage increase. Any questions on personnel expenses? No? Okay. Supplies, office supplies, again, I apologize, that actually decreasing $75. And then health and safety, I guess I'm going to go ahead and discuss this now. This is related to an expense line in the 30s, but it's coming down because this year we had budgeted the purchase of AEDs for our facilities. We have not done that yet, but the money is still in there and do still intend to do that. But there's an expense line this year. I've identified Centos is the company. And they provide, in essence, a leasing service for AEDs where they take the responsibility of maintaining them, coming in and checking them monthly to make sure that the battery's charged, the pads are good, and, pads and batteries are replaced as needed at no charge under that agreement. And if Ms. Piedmont Smith asked at the executive committee if we had looked at other services, I have done that. I did not change the budget. Comparable services that I saw, I think the Centos rate is $129 per unit per month. 125 was the lowest per unit per month, was the lowest I saw from any other services that I looked at. Not to say that we, won't ultimately go that route with one of those other services, but I didn't think the difference was enough to warrant changing the budget. Having said that, if the board approves the budget with that AED service in there, that will obviously change what we do with regard to acquiring AEDs this year. But whether through a service or us purchasing and maintaining them ourselves, we do intend to supply AEDs to our facilities this year. Fuel, lubricants, tires and tubes, no changes in any of those. And then there's the general operating, big hit there. That's sorry, somebody have a question or comment? That is predominantly going to be, the bulk of that is going to be new signage at the facilities. And this is somewhat related to the plan update. There's been some talk of potentially out of the plan doing some rebranding, but regardless of whether or not we change anything, new signage is needed at the facilities, and that's something that's going to happen. But there's also some additional in there if we do any sort of rebranding or changing of anything, and we need to do new letterhead, new business cards. There should be enough in there to cover that as well. No changes in the building materials or road-based materials or repair parts. Minor tools and equipment are staying the same. Other repair maintenance supplies. Other supplies, and again, pretty good increase there. And again, that's just trying to anticipate what our needs will be with the plan update. We're going to need, regardless of signage and business cards that we may or may not need, anticipate that there'll be additional supplies needed for us to move forward toward the goals and objectives that are going to ultimately wind up in the plan. So we're trying to put some money in there to account for those things. Any questions on supplies? Okay. Services and charges. I apologize for the double commas. That's how important legal is, but we're dropping that a little bit. If you recall, we did make the switch over to county legal for the majority of our legal needs. but we are going to continue to retain Angela Parker as we work through the host fee agreement with Rumpke, just based on her experience and familiarity with our existing agreement that's in place with Rumpke, and and the requirements that are within that contract of what we have to do when a new facility opens up. Thought it would be best to retain her to work us through that. Engineering's coming down. Laboratory staying the same. Consultant, I apologize. I missed a lot of the increase decrease on these, but $4,000 increase on there. Again, that's a place to put some money in. If we need to bring somebody in to to help us develop advertising materials, or related to the new goals and objectives in the solid waste management plan. Another big increase in other professional services. If you'll recall, the blue building that was left standing when the landfill was closed, that we've really just used for storage. But if you'll recall, we did having some repair work done on that, and a lot of bird nesting material inside one of the walls caught on fire. And that's Mr. Paulson, who is, I see him, he's still sitting back there. But he can address this probably better than I can if there's questions. But we've worked with, had a lot of people look at that and looked at what it would take to repair that. If you'll recall, the wall that caught on fire was something that was built when we closed the landfill. We took a part of the building down that connected, I guess, another building down that connected to this building. So the wall that caught on fire was the wall that was constructed to close the opening when that connecting building was torn down. And it was going to cost as much to repair it as it was to demolish the whole building. And we've talked with a lot of people. Lee and I have talked about this a lot, and looking at existing and potential future needs and costs to get that structure safe to continue to use. And we felt that the best option moving forward would just be to bring that building down, which is still, it's a 80 by 60, 25-foot high steel structure. So there's still a substantial cost to get that demolished. And depending on who we work with to do that, there is hope maybe to recoup some of that cost by scrapping the material. And again, that would depend on the contractor and whether or not that's something that they would be agreeable to, or if they would build their recouping cost into their cost to demolish the building. So then there's your medical services, the big increase there. And again, that is the proposed AED service agreement that I discussed earlier. And 5,000 increase professional social media services, again, anticipated to the goals and objectives for the updated solid waste management plan. Telephone costs are going down slightly. We're leaving postage the same. Travel costs are coming down. It's based on previous year's experience. Freight and handling staying the same. Other communications staying the same. Big increase in printing services. We've been holding off on we need to print new service guides, but we've been holding off on that till we have the solid waste management plan in place, so that we can make sure that what we're producing is in line with the goals and objectives of the plan. Excuse me. An increase in media advertising, and again, due to the plan update and anticipating that we'd be doing some additional advertising, looking at the goals and objectives that are in there, there's a lot of additional outreach and media and PR that are in a lot of those goals. So want to make sure we have funds to do all of that stuff. Legal advertising is being cut in half, just based on our experience. No changes in workers' compensation or liability. I've had some discussions with our agent Highland on those policies, and they anticipate that there'll be some changes, but they don't think that we'll have anything significant. We've seen a pretty good drop in electric. That's just based on what we've currently experienced, in recent years, what our usage and what our rates are. Gas is going down a little bit. Small increase in water and sewer. That's based on the proposed rate increase from CBU. Small decrease in building repair and maintenance, and then no changes to office equipment repair and maintenance and tire and tubes repair and maintenance, or vehicle repair and maintenance. Pretty good drop in machinery and equipment repair and maintenance. Again, that's just based on what we've experienced previous years and year to date. No change in other repair and maintenance or snow removal. Land rental goes up based on a 5% annual increase clause in the lease on the Bethel Lane site. And machinery and equipment rental stays the same. That's under contract. No changes for other rentals. Dues and subscriptions coming down a little bit. Training and education, I've left the same. You can probably see in the comparison sheets, we haven't spent a whole lot on that, but for this past year, training and education opportunities were kind of thrown upside down because of COVID. And so didn't feel comfortable dropping that based on our experience over the year of COVID. Leachate disposals coming down 20,000. I think we had a couple of years ago, we had one bad year and tried to budget the following year accordingly. And but we've just seemed to have a fluke year. So we're trying to bring that back down in line with what our actual expenses are. No change in HHW disposal. Pretty good drop in electronics disposal. That's just based on what we've experienced in previous years. Other collection disposal contracts going up slightly. It's based on what we've experienced in recent years and year to date. No change in Freon expenses. Hauling contracts go up slightly based on a 1% increase clause that's in that contract. Glass hauling is coming down some. Tire recycling, and there's your $5,000 increase. That's the offset for the proposed revenue, a new revenue line if we're going to do a waste tire program. Stormwater fees coming down pretty good. The stormwater office did, they resurveyed the impervious surface at the landfill and reduced that quite a bit for us. So that's, those fees are dropping significantly for us moving forward. Recycling fees, we left the same. Just didn't feel that we had enough. The fees have only been in place since last May. Just didn't feel that we had enough data to make any adjustments on that. So we're leaving that the same. And then licenses and permits remaining the same. So, any questions on services and charges? Okay. Capital outlays, no change in other improvements, but since the question was raised, Ms. Piedmont Smith, that's how we're replacing a roof on the leachate treatment plant. That's just kind of that $10,000 is a standing item we leave in the budget every year at the landfill, just in case something like that were to happen. So, also looking at $1,200, get a laptop for the controller. This kind of makes sense with the virtual hybrid environment moving forward, for her to have the ability to do that from wherever is convenient for her. And then also proposing $20,000 to purchase a new outreach vehicle. Looked at doing that a couple of years ago, ultimately decided not to do that. But again, that is a 2004 Honda Element, I believe. And it still serves its purpose for us, but it is showing its age. And from my perspective, the need for repairs and the cost of repairs is increasing. And I think that it's time to look at potentially replacing that. That's the operating budget. Still have 2 more slides for the debt service, and one for debt service and one for the cumulative capital fund, which I can run through those real fast, or if we want to do comments and questions on the operating budget, whatever your preference is.
This Penny, I have a question about the operating budget. How much under budget do we expect to be for 2021? I ask that because so many of the assumptions about what we need in 2022 are based upon the 2021 budget.
Yeah, and yeah. I apologize. I don't feel prepared to answer that question. I can make sure that Kathy and/or I are prepared to address that at the August meeting before a vote, or we can get you information in the interim. But it's I off the top of my head, I would, historically we're in that $200,000 range. I think that I would anticipate that we would be in line with reversions from previous years. Some of that's going to be due to the, we do have the unfilled position at South Walnut that we did leave on the books. And I apologize, I'll go back to this budget in the personnel services category. Those wages do account for that position that's not filled. We don't intend to fill it, but we have left it on the books and budgeted for it in case there is a need to fill that position down the road. And some, this year it won't carry that $10,000 other improvement from the landfill generally reverts every year. Like I said, that is a just in case, but obviously this year we've had that instance, and we will use that and probably some other funds to cover that roof and the treatment plant. But I apologize. I did not. That's not something I considered researching, and I don't know that I'm prepared to give you an adequate answer to that question right now.
I had a separate issue I wanted to raise. And that is hiring an intern or two to help implement some of the goals that the CIC has come up with, especially as far as social media campaigns and education and outreach. We talked about this at the EC meeting, but I did a little math, and I mean, just hiring one intern for 10 hours a week for one semester, along with the FICA, would cost us about $2,400. And I think this would be money well spent, because most of the costs of the outreach plan will be staff time. And I think, a student, an IU student, or even an Ivy Tech student could really benefit, from the experience and from learning from Elisa and others at the district. And since we have that position that's not filled, and since we have a lot of money put aside in media, in printing, in consultant fees and all that, I think it would be relatively easy to find $2,000, if not $4,000, to have 2 semesters of an intern. But what I want to get some feedback on that from you all.
I'll jump in real fast and first apologize. I did see the emails. You did send me some emails, I think with somebody from Human Resources from the city, and got gave me some contact information to pursue interns, and I did not get back to you on those, but that was my exact thought, that we have that unfilled position. It is budgeted for, and barring something completely unforeseen happening, and we have to fill that at the first of the year. Yeah, there would be funds that would make funds available, that we could do an intern. We could even, create a part-time staff position if we're not going to fill that position at all. But that provides us cushion in the personnel services category for an intern, a part-time position, whatever might be necessary and appropriate, to help us move forward with the goals and objectives in the plan update.
Mhm. So I will comment that the county council has greatly benefited from interns, in particular those through a SPIA program. And that program involves interviews in early August to identify individuals who would be a good fit for the work ahead in the district, and also individuals who would be good, it would fit their educational plans. So I don't think we've ever had a bad intern. We've had some real stars, though.
Caroline Shaw with the city HR department did mention the SPIA Core program, but she said that sometimes there's a wait list of employers who want those interns. So it may not be so easy to add the district as a new employer in the program, but I think we should definitely try it.
I think we should too. And I think it would be attractive to a number of students, really.
I agree, and another thought that crossed my mind, particularly after seeing the emails Ms. Piedmont Smith shared with me between her and Ms. Shaw, that another thought that came to my mind, IU has a media school too, and if what we're looking at is somebody to help with outreach and media,
very good. Yeah,
That's excellent.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, especially with talking about a new web design, we're talking about a whole new logo, everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not dismissing the SPIA program, but if there's a wait list on that, and there's other options out there, other programs at IU that might be beneficial to our purposes.
Well, certainly for the priorities for the coming year. So, and I know one of the faculty members in the media school, so, and he does work with interns.
If we could just get Mark Cuban involved in recycling, we get all sorts of money.
I really have to go. I had a meeting starting at 6 as well.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but we're almost done, right?
We are almost done.
Okay.
We're almost done. Let me, I will share again real fast, and we'll wrap up the, so the debt service bond, we don't have tax rates on that. Those revenues are estimated, but that's all going to be based on the amortization table. The expenses are known. They're going to go down $950, and that debt service is what it is. And we are not proposing any contributions to or expenses from the cumulative capital fund for 2022. So.
That's good. Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Piedmont Smith. You're gone. Ms. Jones had to leave, and we can make no decisions without them. We don't have a quorum anymore, but we do have an opportunity for public comment and comments from the directors. So any of the public who are with us, would they like to comment? Please raise your hand. And I see none. And directors, would any of you like to make a comment?
I think I'm the only
And I
director
see-
besides you that's still here, so.
So that's right. So I will then bring our meeting to a close by saying we did too much during this meeting and lost a number of the directors along the way with the 5-year plan and the proposed budget, but it really couldn't be helped. We just had to tackle both of them. So I thank everybody for their patience and durability. And our next meeting is August 12th.
If I
Not
could
not the same time, not the same place.
if I could interject real fast before you adjourn, and I know there's only the two of you left, but yes, and I apologize. This was a heavy meeting, and I apologize. And August has the potential to be much the same. And with the importance of the budget, I would just throw out. I know that we're all eager to get the plan done, and I'm certainly eager to get it off my desk. But we're not under a deadline to get it done in August. And if we need to put that off till September to make sure that the higher priorities are taken care of, we can certainly do that.
Well, the budget is a priority and there is a deadline on that. So let's make the budget our focus. And that should go for the anything that is of concern for the executive committee as well.
Yeah.
But I don't see any major changes in the proposed budget. Do you, Ms. Githens?
Well, I do worry a little bit about, how much carryover there is going to be, because like I said, when you base the projected budget on current, but you're underspending by $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever, I think that really should impact what we plan for 2022.
So we can look at the history of reversions and discuss that at our next executive committee meeting, if that would be helpful.
Sure, and I do understand wanting to be conservative so that we don't end up in the red. I mean, I really do appreciate that, right. But I know that for the last several years have been a fair amount reverted. So
we can look at that and crunch some numbers and try to identify exactly where that money that is reverting is coming from. Obviously, it's going to be multiple lines, but
fair enough. But I think and I know that you do a very good job with this, is looking at the fluctuations over the years too.
Mm-hmm. So good, and be good for Ms. Martin to jump in for more historical perspective. So
I can't wait to meet you in person, Ms. Martin.
Yes. Well, we're going to do this in August. We will see everybody in the Nat U Hill room, or the public can see us on Zoom, and that's August 12th at 4:00 p.m.
August 2nd.
Oh, God.
No. What? No. That second is the executive board meeting.
Yes, August 12th for the
board meeting. The executive committee meeting is a public meeting as well.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And that will be, as of right now, that will be in the Nat U Hill room. That's August 2nd. We'll assume that the emergency will have expired, as it's currently scheduled to do. And I apologize if I didn't tell you about this, but I worked with Dina in the commissioner's office and have made arrangements. All of the remaining executive committee and CAC meetings have all been moved to the Nat U Hill room, so we have that hybrid meeting ability.
So that's good.
Okay.
So
very good.
Thank you on that. And if there's nothing further, we'll be adjourned until we see each other in person next. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.